for coming to this first attempt at doing a lunch and learn. We have other ones in the backs of our minds. Although I'll say right now, we do have one planned for the last Saturday of September on taking the mystery out of Medicare. You know, most of us in this room probably are participants in Medicare, and the experts say we should review our plan annually. So this is for everyone, although we're kind of hoping that it will be for some of our younger 50s types people. But I'd like to introduce our speaker. You know, before I met a professional fundraiser, I thought if I do, I'm gonna need to put my hands in my pockets and make sure that I don't ask many questions and nod but never take my pen out of my pocket. Well, then I met some professional fundraisers and I found out my idea is completely wrong. And so today, this might be your first exposure to a professional fundraiser, but Jill has been doing this for many years for many large organizations like the American Red Cross and the, you said the Cancer Society and some other big ministries and stuff, but now she's with a different one called CareNet. Now, I want to tell you a little bit of my backstory with CareNet. Is I was in seminary in the early 80s, and we had a very unusual professor there named Dr. Harold O.J. Brown. Now, what was unusual about him first was he had two middle initials, and he was in no way connected to O.J. Simpson. And I have no idea what his O.J. stands for, but he used to occasionally come to campus wearing lederhosen. And that was pretty unusual too, being in Deerfield, Illinois. You don't see many people walking around German clothing. But it turns out that he was a good friend of Francis Schaeffer, who many of you will remember was a very well-known Christian scholar and philosopher. And the two of them and one other man named C. Everett Koop, they started an organization called Family Research Council. Is that it? Yeah. And they started that in 1975, and it eventually was morphed into something called CareNet. And you may know that CareNet is one of the largest pro-life movements or organizations in the U.S. And today we have I didn't sleep much last night. I was so nervous. Those of you that know me know that might be a bit of a stretch. Jill is from CareNet, but I want to say something about that. She asked if she could hand out CareNet pens, and I said sure, but she knows this is not a fundraising event. She's just talking about how we distribute funds. Nevertheless, it's important for you to know she does represent an organization, and you can keep the pen if you want. Just one more comment before I introduce her, and I'm going to ask some questions of her about herself. But there was an organization in our community, a pro-life organization called CareNet. You may know that a few years ago they changed their name, and they decided to disaffiliate with the 1,500 other pro-life organizations around the U.S. that are a part of the CareNet umbrella organization. So the Alliance for Women is no longer part of the CareNet family. You just need to know that as we go forward. Now, Jill, how about if you stand up here and I'll ask you a few questions.
Okay.
Can you,
I'm going to stand right there. How's
okay,
that?
very good.
Can you hear us okay?
Yeah.
Great.
Tell us about the family you grew up in.
Well, I am a Colorado native, and I grew up in the southeastern portion of the state, not the beautiful mountains, the flat farmland. My dad is a rancher, so I grew up on an Angus ranch with 7 stinky boys that were my brothers. And so I said, one of 8, I said, so that just proves you can tie me to the piano, but you should run if I get loose. So we lived in a very rural lifestyle. Yeah.
How big was your ranch?
2,200 acres.
Can you imagine that? That must have held 5 or 6 cows.
Well, a couple, and then we had 2 state leases, so it was a little bit bigger than that, but that's what we owned outright. So.
And Now, the most amazing thing that you won't believe is your husband's former job.
Yes, so my husband Bill rodeo professionally for 17 years. He was a bulldogger, is the slang, a steer wrestler. I said, you know, the guy that jumps off a perfectly good horse and wrestles the steer to ground for money. That was that guy. And I swore I would never marry a cowboy, Stu. I was never going to marry a cowboy. Look at that, 35 years later,
A
what a liar.
professional cowboy.
Yeah.
And how many children do you have?
We have 2 step boys and our daughter Ivy. She's 30, and we have one son in love. He's 31, and one precious peach, yummy little 3-year-old grandson. So yeah, and we have I have step grandkids too, and they're great. But this little one, you know, Stu.
Yeah, I don't know. I would like to know.
Well, yeah, okay, I'll twist
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to pray, and then we'll get started. And I think you'll find this very informative and hopefully good use of your time this morning. Heavenly Father, thank you for today. Thank you for the opportunity we have to learn these important truths as we plan our futures. Thank you especially for Jill and her willingness to make this one-stop visit from Colorado to teach us about these important subjects. Be with her, we pray, as she teaches us and leads us. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Okay.
Stu, I'm gonna let you out this way, so you don't.
No, look at this, look at this.
Look at you, fancy stuffer. All right, very good.
It's from a lot of barn dances.
You are Barney.
I've been to one.
Well, thank you very much for having me. A special thank you and a round of applause to Stu and Sherry. They have been the ultimate host family, so thank you very much. If you would just appreciate them on my behalf today, I'd be very grateful. I have been doing this for a couple of days now, and I'm grateful to have had that opportunity. And the ministry that I am a part of right now, we differ a little bit in that we call ourselves pro-abundant life. And what that means is, of course, we're pro-life, but we're also pro-eternal life. So we like to talk about the fact that we're here for the not yet born and the not yet born again.
Oh, I love that.
And that's a little bit different from what some people focus on. And the reason this is important to me is because I'm a mama because of adoption. I have a lot of friends who have tried to tell me their 16-hour labor story, so I share my 6-year labor story. And we find a common ground. Today, one of the things we're going to talk about is just some truisms. And I want you all to be very comfortable. Raise your hands and ask questions, because before lunch we're going to get through a lot of material, a lot of conversation, and maybe do some talking at your tables if necessary. But this is very informal, and I don't want you to feel overwhelmed when you leave. I want you to have some great ideas and think, oh, I need to do 1 or 2, maybe 3 things after I leave here. So that would be very important. That would be a good takeaway for you. The other thing is we're going to spend some time in questions and answers, because all of us are just as different as can be. None of us have exactly the same situation. And I am going to do one little disclaimer. I cannot give you legal or financial advice. I'm not an advisor. I am a partner to our ministry supporters, and what I do is make sure that their needs are met as a donor to our charity. Now, what's a charity? Who knows what a charity is?
Somebody you give money to.
Someplace you give money to. So like the grocery store. Yeah. A charity is the place that you want to help ensure do something good into the future. Okay? So that's your church, whatever it is. So we're going to talk about a lot of truisms. There are taboos. There's taboos, and we're going to talk about that. I should never, ever talk about myself. Jill, in your position, don't ever talk about yourself. So guess what? I'm going to talk about myself. This is my beloved, my husband of 35 years. We just celebrated our 35th on June 1st. And that is Mr. Pumpkinhead over there. That is Mason. When he was in love with Bun Bun, that's his favorite thing in the world. And then this is our beautiful daughter, my son-in-law, and he is now 3. And this caricature, this was him riding this little train last week, and that's his personality. He is full of beans, that kid. And he wants, hey, Nana, could you watch this? Nana, can you watch this? So he's telling me what to do. You see the little finger? He's always telling me what to do. This is him. He is so personable. But this is the reason this today is important. And so thank you for coming out and giving up a little bit of your time to spend with me in this conversation. And that's really what it is. It's just a conversation. Because you're going to have people that you love, charities that you love, this church that we're sitting in, I know you love. There's things and opportunities that we can really make an impact. And I think it's important for us to talk about that. The other thing about taboos, about what we just never talk about, is religion, politics, death, and taxes. So today we're going to talk about religion, politics, death, and taxes. So, those are things you're just taught. That is not polite company. Don't talk about that. Oh, come on. You have to. You have to. Who cares about this church? All right. Who cares about the lost? Who cares about the state of your nation? Who cares about your tax bracket? All right. And who has planned for your death? Not quite everybody. That's why we have to talk about this. This is something that we have been taught through all time. Jill, you just don't talk about this. This is taboo. Really, we should be talking about it in a normal conversation throughout our lifetime, especially if you have children, especially if you intend to leave a legacy. Some folks don't have children. They're going to think, well, I can't leave a legacy. Yes, you can. Everyone who has ever been born by God's design is leaving a legacy. It is up to us to decide what that's going to be. What's the dash, between the two, the birth and the death date. I wonder if anybody has had a mentor in their life. Raise your hand if you had a great mentor. Okay, that's most of us. Did anybody have a family member that was very impactful in your life? An amazing family member? Okay. What about a sermon you never forgot? Oh, yeah. Okay. Things that impress us stay with us. There's a reason that's important, because the way God designed our brain, there is a thing called neuroplasticity. Neuroplasticity. And in our brain, we make a groove when we keep thinking about the same thing, the same thing, the same thing. So when we're told, don't ever speak about politics, we don't ever speak about religion, we never speak about death plans. You have to. You fall off into the rut. You ever been on a country road driving the feed truck? And it's rainy, and you fall into the ruts, even though you're trying not to be in the ruts? When you fall in the rut, that's an old pattern. That's a vein of neuroplasticity. We can build new neuroplasticities when we create a new idea, a new thought, and a new path in our brain. So I'm hoping today, if we get through nothing else, that you'll have something new in your heart and your mind, and a new belief about what might be frightening. There is no reason to be afraid, because if there's a fear factor to something, we will believe that, attach to that, and it'll become a part of our belief system. Oftentimes when people are frustrated, or they're angry even, their primary emotion is actually fear. So we don't want to attach to that primary emotion. We want to make sure that we get educated, feel supported, and have a way to make a new plan if we don't have one. And it takes away the fear of it. 365 times in the Bible it says what? Do not fear. Do not fear. One for each day. Who needs it? We all need that, right? We need that reminder on a daily basis. Some things are simply true. We're all going to die one day. Mm-hmm. Unless Jesus comes before we do, and things get interrupted, would be just fine. When my daughter was, it was shortly after 9/11, so I don't remember how old she was. We were getting ready for school one day, and she runs in, we had the radio on, she runs in and she says, Mama, what is war? So she's like second grade, I think, at this point. What is war? And you think, ooh, how do I explain that to a little thing? And I said, well, it's when two people with a lot of power are unhappy with each other, and they get other people to be unhappy about the same things, and then they fight. She said, okay. And I said, oh, don't worry though. I don't want you to be worried. Because the Bible says when there's wars and rumors of wars, we aren't to be scared. Because then Jesus is going to come and get us, and it's going to be okay. She said, okay, good. Runs out to the bathroom, runs out of the bathroom, comes right back in a few minutes. Mom, so if Jesus comes like Tuesday, and I'm at school, and you're at work, I just want you to know, the first thing I'm going to do is go find Noah, because I want to know how he got those animals in that boat. And then, the second thing I'm going to do, I'm going to go find Jesus, so we can show me who all the disciples really were. I don't know who they were. I don't think I'll recognize them, so I want Jesus to introduce me. And she says, Mama, if you don't see me right away, don't worry, I'll catch up with you. And I thought, that's a plan. That's a kid with a plan. And you know, plans don't have to be scary. They don't have to be scary. And so I just think this is an important thing for us to talk about. There's a time to live and a time to die, right? We know that from Ecclesiastes. So, preparation on our part gives peace to our family and friends. My kids are scared to death to talk about death. And my mother has not helped. I'm from a very large family, and my mom is a pistol. So for her 80th birthday, she went and bought herself a burial plot and told everybody that would listen about it, and just laughed and laughed and laughed about that. So for her 82nd birthday, she went and picked out her casket, and she laughed and laughed and laughed. So now every time Granny has a birthday, the kids are like, did she buy her burial suit? This is really starting to freak me out, Mom. And I said, well, she might have, but aren't you glad you know what Granny wants? And she doesn't need another thing in the world. So my kids have learned that it's not a terrible thing to talk about. Goals without plans are just wishes. So if you have told your sister-in-law, Sally, you know, we had so many great times on the boat, or we had so many great times skiing in Colorado, whatever it is, we've had great times. Sally, when I die, I hope that you'll tell my husband, John, that I definitely want to be cremated, and I would like to have my ashes spread on said ski slope or in the lake or whatever it is. Is that a plan? It's not a plan. It's a conversation, but it is not a plan. If things are not written down, it didn't happen. If it's not formulated, it's not going to happen. So, because what's going to happen is your sister-in-law's daughter, your niece, is going to say, that's not what we're doing. And then everything is going to be a kerfuffle. Preparing for our graduation to heaven is not unlike preparing for a new baby. Does that strike you as odd? It does strike us as odd, doesn't it? What do we do when we prepare for a new baby? We buy equipment. We have a party. We announce things. We invite friends. We do all these things, right? Okay, when we die, we buy equipment. We have a party. We invite friends. There's a lot of similarities because it's such a natural cadence to our lives. And it's not anything for us to be worried about, but we do want to plan about it. Because I'll tell you, it's difficult when you get to, when I was planning a family member's funeral, and I did not know what they wanted. And so when we work our whole life to be able to pass on our life legacy of our values and our valuables, the planning brings the peace. Because then you know in your heart, oh, okay, Bill and I have talked about this. My husband's name is Bill, that's not an example. Bill and I have talked about this, and we agree about X, Y, and Z. And the kids know our wishes. There's peace because we've talked about that, and we've spoken to our kids about it. Where planning is also our wishes are fulfilled. So my husband, being the great cowboy that he is, absolutely does not want to be in the ground and all these colorful visions of what he paints and what he doesn't want. There was a place we used to ride horseback through an aspen grove in Colorado. He said, Mother, you get on horseback and take me there. I said, if I'm still able to get on horseback, I'll do that. If not, I'll have some people. We'll take care of that. But we had a conversation. And I want his wishes to be fulfilled. That's why we have that conversation, because I want to know what he wants. And he knows what I want. And so planning also protects us from taxes. Who wants to pay more taxes? Would you really love for your kids or grandkids to pay a lot of tax? No. I don't know about you, but I'm not thrilled about my investments that I've made with the U.S. government to date. So, I think maybe we should have some better roads, and maybe some better schools, and maybe some other great things. But we all have opinions about how that should go. And as I'm not an advisor, there are some things that you can do that will protect your family and your grandkids from a lot of tax burden. So I will say there are instances and states where you can do what's called a generation skip. Say, for instance, I have dear friends who their kids have done very well, they're financially established. Some of them are making more right now than their parents had made before. And so they were like, hey, our kids are doing great, but our grandkids still need to go to college. Or I'd like to be able to give them seed money to buy their first house, or whatever it is. You can do what's called a generation skip, and you can bequeath your money to those kids in a special way that they will forego those taxes. So that's the other pickle. We have 50 states. None of them are exactly the same. So we'll talk a little bit about that, but there's things that you'll have to do a little research. I call it the Nancy Drew phase. There's things a little bit that are also the truisms of what you have to know legally. Here's some basic musts. Anybody catching a theme here? Everybody needs a will. There's my mommy voice. Get a will. Why is that such a big deal? We all need to have a will. Well, Jill, it is so expensive. You know, we looked into it. It's going to be $2,500 for us to get a will. Okay, here is a will kit from Amazon for $16. Here it is. Fill it out. There's other places that I'll talk about here in a little bit that will also, you can find things for free, but everybody's got to have a will. And I don't tell you these things to frighten you, but here's the truth of where we are. The worst states for estate planning and for, I will say, makes it difficult for families and friends are California, New York, and Colorado. Okay? So in the state of Colorado, I'm just giving this as an example, if my husband and I were both to be killed in a car wreck at the same time, and we had minor children, and my parents had come to the emergency room, there they are with their granny and papa, at the worst moment of their lives. In the state of Colorado, those children will not leave with my parents. Because there are minor children involved, the state will then be contacted, DHS will intervene, and my children would go home with foster parents. In the state of Colorado, they have to have 9 months of kinship care training to be qualified to be guardians for my minor children. Okay, that's not good, folks. And in the state of Colorado, because we didn't have a will, what happens? All of your assets are in probate. And so your entire family is at the hands of somebody else. Now, it might be different in the state of Wisconsin. It is, it's a little bit worse. It's a little bit worse. Because in the state of Wisconsin, if you'll see, this is a direct quote from their government site. So I wrote it out, if it were me and my husband, without a will, the state intestacy laws dictate asset distribution, and a judge appoints a guardian for your children. So here's the thing. Thank you for all your efforts to get people here to have this conversation. But if you know someone with children, the reason I said get a will, get a will, get a will, get a will, give them $30 and say, here, go buy a will from Amazon. Here, go to freewill.com and get a free will. Do something so that your wishes are made known. Because if you don't, a judge is going to. Dr. Dave and I were talking about it last night with the lovely Libby over at Stu and Sherry's. And we were talking about the fact that the fastest growing need and the most constant issue that we have through our government right now is the fact that the probate. The government should not be in charge of your final wishes for your children or anything else in my book. So this is a fact given to you for free from Jill Anderson today. Yeah, that's your quote. That's not, you don't even have to cite it. That's just me rambling. You can't leave your legacy in the hands of people that don't know you and don't even know what you would want. When we were raising kids, it was very, very important to me that our children be raised in the faith. And my child was in the faith. So we lived very sacrificially for a lot of years because we were not making a lot of money at that time. But it was very important to me that she have a Christian education. So her entire school, we lived pretty tight to put her in church school. And then came time for high school, and I'd been very judicious. My husband calls me Budget Betty. I'd been pretty judicious, and I said, okay, well, she's going to go to Christian Academy. Well, not knowing Christian Academy was $15,000 a year. And at the time, God had blessed us because I was CEO and president for a hospital foundation at the time. We were in the very, very, very small church. And our entire youth department was my daughter. And there were about 30, 35 regular members. We lived clear up in the mountains, way, way up in Colorado. And I said, I don't know how we're going to do this, but we just started praying about how are we going to do this? How are we going to do this? And Pastor came to us and said, hey, we know what you guys have been praying for. We just want to talk to you. There had been a dear person who many years before, I was telling Sherry when I first moved to this community, she was my best friend. And at the time, she was 90. And I was 38. And she was so precious to me. And I got to have her in my life for 5 years. When she had passed, she had left an endowment to the church. Her husband had been a physician. And she said, I want this to be for the good of the church, the glory of God, and the growth of anyone who needs it. Those were the three things she wanted. So it left it kind of broad, but that was what they'd done. It always makes me emotional. So the church came to us and said, Jill, we're going to help you pay half of that every year. if you'll keep her in Christian education. Now, friends, that was a gift. That was quite a scholarship for us. And, you know, a 529 account, if you don't know what a 529 account is, a savings account that's just for education. And it, unfortunately, when we went to talk about that, it could not have been for anything but higher education. Could have been for college, but it couldn't have been for high school, and I thought we were in a pickle. But because someone planned and was generous, even I have been recipient of that. Such a huge thing. What a difference it made. Because of that, my daughter has this incredible heart for missions. She was getting in trouble a little bit in high school, running her mouth. You know, they have a hard time stopping from here to there. I don't know if you've ever seen a teenager before, but it's something special. So we ended up having those conversations, and her dad said, that kid's got to get to work. She's got to have a vocation in her call, something. We got to get her to work. So just a few days later, the youth pastor had come forward, and I said, well, Ivy, would you be interested in going on a mission trip? And she said, yeah, I think I would. So the first mission trip was to Honduras. And she's gone for 3 weeks. Very hard for a helicopter mother to send her baby off with a bunch of strangers. And, you know, we just prayed and prayed and prayed. She came back a different person, friends. She came back a different person. We had pictures. She said, Mom, it's like camping there every day. I said, yeah, that's how they live, right? So she said, Mom, this is their stove. And it was a big barrel that had been cut in half that they were cooking on. And she had worked at an orphanage. They had 180 children. And she said, Mom, it's good you didn't go. We would have come back with all of them. I said, yeah, you're right. We probably would have. We probably would have. But it changed her life. And then she ended up going to Haiti. And then she went to Croatia. And then she went to, where else did she go? Oh, they went to Panama. She went to a lot of trips. Took a lot of trips. She said to my sister-in-law one time, she goes, oh, Mother and Daddy never travel. My folks don't travel. She said, I love to travel. I love to go on mission trips. I was like, you little stinkweed, we don't travel because we're sending you on mission trips. But this is not free. So, but we just saw this child come alive. And that was a gift that was planned from the very beginning. It's because we made a plan and a commitment for her Christian education. The Lord fulfilled that in ways that are just amazing, amazing, amazing. Okay, so why most people, there was a conversation last night, why don't people make plans? So this is a truism, important for us to understand. We are afraid of our own death. We don't want to face it. Really hard to face. We all believe we have time. I was just sitting here with Steve and Larry. Larry lost his first wife 3 months into marriage, and Steve lost his wife with 5 kids there. And if you don't have a plan, that's a tough thing. This is one table, and I know all of you have a story. We all have lots and lots of stories. And I've been doing this over 30 years, and you can't believe what I've seen, lived through, and witnessed. We don't have time. The time is now. So make sure you make a note or two before you leave today. We don't believe we have enough assets. Well, Jill, I don't even own a house, so I don't really need to do anything. Oh, yes, you do. Yes, you do. You really need to do something, because otherwise the state of Wisconsin is going to have everything you have, and they may or may not take control of your property right away, but they're going to. So your lack of planning, even if you're renting a place, becomes the problem of your landlord, because they can go in there and seize that property until they decide good and ready to go and get your stuff. Okay? So don't make your lack of planning somebody else's problem too, because they're going to have to go in there and clean out all your stuff or what have you. The other thing I'm going to say, every state, you'll want to make this note, check your unclaimed property in the state that you reside primarily, because you may have money in unclaimed property at the state that you may not know about it. Even just as within the last 5 years, we moved from Estes Park, Colorado, down to where my folks are in southern Colorado. I didn't know we had a deposit at the electric company. I didn't even remember it because we'd lived up there for so long. So I had $350 of unclaimed property at the state of Colorado. So here I am chirping on about this with somebody. And I get on the website and I'm telling them, make sure you check your name on the unclaimed property sites. And there's my name. I was like, oh, that doesn't look good. I'm sitting there with the donor who's like, I wonder if that's you. I'm like, oh, that's absolutely me. That's from Estes Park, Colorado. That used to be my electric company. So yes, so there was $350 I didn't know I was going to get. There you go. So this is important. And we don't know if we should have a will or a trust. That's a great and basic question. Depends again by the state if you need a will or a trust. Who needs a will? Everybody. Yeah, okay, yeah, good job. You're a great class. Yes, everybody needs a will. So if you need a trust or not, okay, let's talk about that. If you own property, you need a trust. Because your property has attachments to it. So some will have a mortgage, some will be owned outright. Some people have more than one property. Some people have a blended family. I'm from a blended family. My dad is my second dad. And you need to have a trust because there has got to be details stipulated in that group of who handles what. And within the trust itself, it'll show the holdings of the properties. Also, yes, question, let's hear.
What about a transferable upon death, and you have a will, that it goes
Transferable.
upon death, and then you list who gets the property?
That could be legal, it depends on the state that you're in.
It is
And
for Wisconsin.
okay, great, okay, so transferable, yeah, probably good. I would still encourage a trust because, and I'm not an advisor, because if someone comes up against you in a court and says, I don't want that to transfer to Aunt Sally, you have a litigious situation. So I would seek your counsel on that one just to make sure that it's solid. And I don't know Wisconsin law, so again, I'm not an advisor. I'm just old and experienced. Okay. We also don't know where to turn for help and advice. We had this conversation today, earlier this morning, I think over breakfast. Anybody in this room have a certified financial planner in your family? Okay. A certified advisor? You have an advisor? You have an advisor? Okay. Those are not the same. A certified financial planner is not the same as an advisor. Who has an attorney in their family? CPAs? Okay. All right, great. Well, those are the people that you need in your life. I would always, always, always advise that you find a certified financial planner. An advisor is good, but a planner is certified in the fact that they see all aspects. And they are not selling a generalized product for commission. Okay? Not that that isn't good and it can be valid, just a word of warning. A CPA is invaluable because they're going to know about the tax structure, and I don't know about your CPA, but mine goes to school 38 hours to 40 hours every year to stay up on the tax law. That's how quickly it changes. And none of us, I don't know, I mean, some of you maybe could. I don't have that kind of time to devote and chase those facts. But we need a CPA, and oftentimes we need an attorney. So we also believe that the process is going to be too expensive. As I just said, I am from a blended family. And we had a ranch, and we had 2 state leases. And state lease law in the state of Colorado, the leases are extremely, extremely valuable. Because I don't know if you ever heard, but they're not making any more land. So what we've got is what we've got. And so when we got to the point that my folks were talking about selling the ranch, I said, okay, when do you want to do this? And Dad said, well, within the next 10 years or so, either one of you kids have to take it over, or we're going to have to sell this ranch. Well, we had to go get some advice, and we got a lot of it. And when it came time to realize that we really needed to put all this in a trust, my darling mother and my precious papa freaked out completely. Because of the cost of what this trust was going to be. Now, I love my mama, but she can get a nickel out of a turnip. My mother she invented Budget Betty. I'm just a byproduct. I'm not the real one. She's the real one. So she would not even consider setting up this trust because of the cost that was associated with it. So, because we're all adults now, and there's 8 of us, I said, okay, we're going to split the cost of this 8 ways. All of us are going to put in for this trust, and we're going to get this structured. My mom said, well, I can't say no to a gift, can I? I was like, no, please, Jesus, don't let her say no to a gift, because if something were to happen to one of them, we would have been in a total mess. So, truly, we finished the trust. It takes several months. I'm set up as executor, and we have all this going on. And my dad, who was really at that point in time doing pretty well physically, he's out feeding cows, and he just simply fell off the back of the flatbed truck. Just fell off. And it's cold, it's February, and he's out there, he just put the truck in granny. I don't know if any of you have ever fed cows. You just let the truck crawl? Okay, all right. So he's just letting the truck crawl. He's on the back of the truck by himself. So there's the truck crawling through the pasture, and there's my dad in the pasture by himself. Thankfully, Mother knew that he should be back at such and such a time, and he wasn't back. So she goes out there and finds him in the pasture. And praise God, he had some recovery time, and he had injuries and stuff. But that could have been it for him. That could have been the time, and we had just finished the trust. And then as we were selling the ranch, 8 weeks, this ranch had been into generations, I think 5 generations. You ever had to move off of a place somebody's lived 5 generations? It's a lot, I'll just tell you. 8 weeks of preparing equipment and packing. I packed 187 boxes just from the main house. That does not include the bunkhouse or the barn of what we had to pack. And what kept, and then the auction and blah, 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 blah. In the midst of all this, here's my poor little sweet mama. She falls off the back porch and has a head injury. So while we're in the middle of all this, she has a concussion. She doesn't remember the move. I remind her, that's probably good. You don't need to worry about it now. Okay, so friends, here you're going to see some things. I've already shown you. Here is an example of a will that you can buy for next to nothing on Amazon. I'm not doing a commercial for us, but you can also get a free will at my website that I work for, care-net.org. You can follow in giving, and you'll go to plan gifts, and you can get in there and register, and it's free. And then you can also go to a website that is not affiliated with any charity at all, called freewill.com. And guess how much that costs?
Free.
It's free. Truth in advertising right there. Truth in advertising. It's a free will. So there's just absolutely no reason not to do that today, no matter if you need a trust or just a will. Please, please, please. Now, what's your name?
Dawn.
Hi, Dawn. I'm Jill. It's nice to know you. Dawn says, now, Jill, how often do I need to be looking at what I've done? Okay, well, because, my parents' first will was done in 1979. And I was pretty young then. So things change, right? I would really, really strongly advise that you take a concentrated effort at looking at, updating, praying about, refreshing, reviewing your plans, even if it's a $16 or free will every year. Just look at it every year. Is this still true? Because your kids get married. Kids get divorced. Your siblings die, get remarried. They have more kids. All these things that take place. Please review. So, who needs a will? Everybody. Very good. All right, thank you very much. All right, how to run a good race. Make a will. Make a trust if it's needed. We just talked about that. Beneficiaries. This is important. All right. Is it true that Stu and Sherry have children? Yes, they have 2 boys. All right. Do Stu and Sherry have to leave everything they own to those 2 boys? No. Can the beneficiary be Sherry's checkout clerk at the grocery store if she wants it to be? Yes. Yes. So, an important part for us to be thinking about who benefits from our death or our gift at the end of our life. Who benefits? A beneficiary could be many things, and there is no limit to how you can design that. And you don't have to be an attorney to do that. You do need to be thoughtful about that. And so we can talk about that a little bit more. We're also going to talk a little bit about power of attorney. I need to check myself here. Power of attorneys, both medical and durable. Anybody in this room not have a power of attorney established? You don't have to raise your hand, I'm kidding. You don't have to, but if you don't, it's fine. We need to talk. We need to talk. You need to establish an executor. You need to record all your assets. Now that might seem kooky to you. Now, I want to give you a real life example again of my parents. My mother said, I have been keeping house for 64 years. She said, you mean to tell me you want me to go through this whole house and make a record of all the assets? I said, yes, I do. I do want you to do that. She said, I'm never going to do that. I said, you better. Because if you don't, Sister so-and-so is not going to get the piece of this widget that you said you always wanted her to have. She said, well, you know that. You'll just do it. You'll just take care of it, sis. I said, Mother, if I'm dead, who's going to take care of it? She says, well, you're not going to die. I said, how do you know? I'm on an airplane all the time. What if a plane goes down? I'm the only one that knows that. Well, she didn't like that conversation. But a few days later, I said, are you ready for your yellow tablet now? So that's what we did. I sat her in a room. I said, now sit in this room with this yellow tablet. My mother's a huge art collector. My mother loves Western art. She's collected forever. I said, now sit down and write who gets which painting.
So hard.
Who gets which sculptor. Who gets, oh, I'm telling you folks, I will fight those sister-in-laws. I know there's more of them, but I'm feisty, remember? They tied me to the piano and I got loose, remember? Yeah. There is a green earthenware, stoneware pitcher that has a Dutchman and a Dutch wife kissing on it that my great-great-grandparents brought for a wedding gift. You think those sister-in-laws are going to get that? No, they're not. They're not getting that. I told Mother, I said, put that on my list and put my name under it. I want that picture. Little things like that. But that's what it took. She went through every room, and they've had conversations about who's going to get what. Now, we're a huge family. They have great grandkids, 11 great grandkids. So you have to think about who's going to get what and why. And if you care about this church, say you're an art collector, and the church is something you really want them to have something to beautify a room, or you have a piece you would like to see in the sanctuary, or you have some crystal that you want for women's ministries to have for special events, whatever that might be. Be thinking about who needs to benefit. Beneficiaries, but also personal property. That's important. So record all your assets. And then the other thing that we're going to talk about just before we take a quick break, make sure your records that we're going to be talking about are easily accessible. I would challenge each one of us to have an envelope. It can be just this simple. Have an envelope with a chip clip. You ever seen those chip clips on your potato bags? Sometimes they come with magnets. You can put an envelope full of very important papers in that chip clip on the refrigerator so that it might have your medical directives. Maybe has a first and last copy of your will. The pages, the first page and the last page, is what people legally need in a situation that's emergent, a first page and the last page, or the first and last page of your trust. Put that in an envelope so that if something happens, the neighbor can grab that and get that to the hospital with you. The other thing I'm going to talk about is medical directives and where they need to be placed in your community. So if you do have your medical directives, I'm praying that you have a copy of them with your PCP, your primary care physician, or perhaps you've got that at the hospital where we've got those. If you don't, you need to get those done too. All right, friends, we have about 15 minutes here. Well, my watch is losing time, I think. 12 minutes, straight up 11 o'clock, let's come back, but why don't you take a little bio break, get a cup of coffee, come and ask me any questions you might have, and I'll see you right back at 11, okay? Thank you.